know this is a fractious time in our economy and in Washington. It seems like we can't move forward. Democrats are stuck playing constant defense against what's coming out of the White House. But defense is simply not enough. No team in history, on the field or in Washington, D.C., ever won a damn game without going on the offense. We need to offer a different vision and demonstrate an affirmative, positive plan for the country. That's our responsibility and what this moment demands of us.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. Hear that, Democrats? That's what offense sounds like. That was Senator Alyssa Slotkin today, not just talking the talk, but clearly willing to walk the walk as she announced her new economic war plan for our country. We'll get to exactly what is inside the plan in a second, but right now we make note of the fact that the senator made a deliberate choice where to announce her plan. She decided to come together with people, in this case, speak at a think tank where agreement is not always guaranteed. Slotkin told the Washington Post about her choice for the venue, the Center for American Progress. Quote, "We need to be able to have tough, real conversations about the way forward as a party, and we can't do that by only talking to people who agree with you." And so I went right to a place that in, I think, many ways we have big agreements on things, but in other ways we just really disagree. The bridging of divides and disagreements, or at least efforts to do that, are a rarity at this moment in our politics, in our government. Right now, everything, even down to national intelligence documents and national security, has been hyper-politicized. Donald Trump has sown deep divisions in the country, and he amplifies them around the clock with a right-wing ecosystem. He hardens those divisions every chance he gets. So when things like an extremely significant and consequential military operation take place, assessments are only viewed through a partisan lens on one side of the political divide. Honest questions are framed as attacks from legislators or reporters. Earlier today, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth held a press conference with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, to discuss the impact of the U.S. strikes on Iran. Hegseth started off by aggressively attacking the journalists in the room, some of them his own former colleagues. Meanwhile, the press was doing its job, asking questions, trying to ascertain facts about the full impact of the military strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, which at this hour remains unclear. We do not know the extent of the damage to these sites. We do not know if Iran moved its uranium before the missiles struck those sites. Even Trump's own chairman of the Joint Chiefs did not use Trump's favorite word, obliterated, like Trump has done repeatedly, to describe the impact of the strikes over the weekend. The politicization of everything, including things that used to be off limits, like our military and its work, is where we start the hour with Michigan Democratic Senator Alyssa Slotkin. She's a member of the Senate Armed Services and Homeland Security Committees and a former analyst at the CIA. Senator, thank you for being here today.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Let's start with what you know the facts to be about the strike Saturday night. What do you know that we might not know yet, and what can you share with us?
Well, we did have the official Senate briefing on the Iran strike from Secretaries Hegseth, Rubio, the director of the CIA, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So that was good. That should have been earlier this week, but it happened, and that was important, and a lot of senators participated. I mean, obviously, I can't go into the details of the briefing. It was classified, but I think there's no way around it. I think the damage was significant, and as someone who was at the Pentagon in a previous life, who worked on some of those same Iran war plans, when the U.S. military gets involved, there's going to be significant damage done to these facilities. So I don't think there's a doubt about that. I don't think there's a doubt about the fact that there's no air defenses above Iran right now, which is kind of unprecedented for the last 30, 40 years. So there's definitely big change happening right now. I think the president is not taking his cues from his intelligence community and from his military leaders. He's obviously playing to the rafters on what he's saying about the strike, but there's no way to get around the fact that it was it had a significant impact.
What do you make of the White House doubling and tripling down on the word obliterated to describe not just the physical structures that were targeted by the very capable men and women of the military, but the Iranian weapons program itself.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, without going into details, there was significant damage done. I don't, the word obliterated, I can't speak to that word. I think, honestly, just so everyone understands, when the military takes, action, there's an operation, it's not the military that assesses the battle damage, right? It's the intelligence community that assesses that. And that takes a long time. It takes information from human sources, from all kinds of other sneaky squirrel places where we get information. It takes a minute. And I say that as a former CIA officer. So anyone who says we know exactly what happened, we know exactly the extent of the damage is just not understanding how our system works and what's factual. So I don't think the president is using language based on any intelligence report. He's using language that's around marketing of these strikes. But that's not to say it wasn't an important strike.
Let me read you something that Trump has announced as new policy on Truth Social today. He said, quote, "The Democrats are the ones who leaked the information on what he's now calling the perfect flight to the nuclear sites in Iran. They should be prosecuted." Are you concerned about efforts to, in his words, quote, prosecute lawmakers who had access to intelligence?
Yeah, that was described to me as someone, whoever leaked it, read a DIA report and then called a reporter. I have no idea how that got out. I will just tell you this, as a former CIA officer, if you get a security clearance, there are certain responsibilities that you take with that. And you shouldn't be leaking classified information. It doesn't matter if you like the president or don't like the president. It doesn't matter if you like the operation or don't like the operation. There are rules around having access to classified information. And we've had Republicans that are leaky. We've had Democrats that are leaky over the past 25 years that I've seen this town. So I've always said, like, if you are leaking classified information, you should be held accountable.
What are you able to share with your constituents or with the public about your understanding today, if you have one, about the damage done to Iran's nuclear weapons capability? I know I'm a senator, and I know a lot of people, talk after these briefings. I'm a senator who's a former CIA officer. That was a classified briefing that I went to. The damage was significant. The skill that was required by our military to pull off that kind of a strike was significant. But the administration, I think, is, to me, being a little bit cavalier with sort of the response options the day after planning that really wasn't done on this kind of a strike, right? That's the thing to me, is that you can have a great strike, but what comes next, right? If they had fired at our base in Qatar, which was an unprecedented thing for them to do, and instead of hitting nothing, they had hit a chow hall full of American soldiers and killed 50 people, where would we be right now? What would we be doing right now? Would Donald Trump have felt the need to dig in his heels and respond? And suddenly you're in a cycle of escalation that you can't stop. So I think they were a little lacking in the day after planning, which is what a generation of us who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan, we saw that miss in the last series of wars. We did not plan for the day after. So I think that's certainly happening. But in terms of the actual strikes, there was significant damage. Did it end any potential of the program? It's too early to know now. I don't think so. But I also want to say it's not just about the nuclear activity or the nuclear materials. It's also the psychology of the regime, right? This regime did sign up to a ceasefire very quickly after the U.S. acted. And they are in a very vulnerable position. And that is very different than where we were 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago with Iran. I want to ask you about the speech you gave today. I want to play a little bit more of your message about the economy.
Sure. It's extremely important to understand and like focus ourselves as Democrats, as Americans, on this issue of the economy and of costs, because this is what the president ran on.
Yeah.
This is the lead foot in any pushback on him. A Qatari jet, we can talk about all day long, but what he's doing is distracting us from talking about the very thing he ran on, which he said he was going to put more money in people's pockets. Mm-hmm. And in every single category, your groceries, your insurance, your utility bill, like go down the list of how a family does their budget.
And he's making them pay more, not less. And we should be relentlessly talking about that.
I mean, to your point, we have relentlessly covered the cost. I have a 1.5-year-old, so I get the alerts and the price differences with everything I have bought over the last 19 months, and it is stunning. Things are going up. How do you stay on that message, stay on that plan as a party?
Yeah, well, this is what I tried to do by laying out, my best stab at an economic war plan, is that the president ran on lowering your costs. He's not doing that. But you can't just play defense. You actually have to play offense and lay out your own plan. And so I literally sat down over the past month and figured out, based on me being from Michigan and hearing from people all the time, what they're most concerned about and what they want out of their elected leaders. That's a focus on job creation, on housing, on health care, which every single American I know thinks is broken. It's getting at those big things that every single family in America cares about, and not getting distracted. And I wanted to put that out there. How do we bring back jobs to the United States? How do we make critical supply chains, make them here in America and not elsewhere? How do we get prepared for artificial intelligence and how our education system has to change? You can't beat something with nothing, so I put something out. But I think one of the things that's an important message, especially this week, is that whether you're a moderate or a progressive, wherever you are in the spectrum, the economy and costs and preserving a strong middle class is something that should unite us. And so let's focus there and punch back at the president on those issues.
Well, and the idea of an economic war plan is inherently offensive. I mean, I wonder how much you are placing your training and your not just political DNA, but professional DNA into the politics of the moment.
Well, it's the only thing I know how to do, right? We're all prisoners to our experience at the CIA and the Pentagon. Doing war planning was part of my job. I would just say it's also very clarifying, though, right? What problem are we trying to solve? The middle class in America is shrinking, and that is pissing people off. They feel like the American dream isn't working. They feel like that idea that if they work hard and play by the rules, they get ahead and their kids do better. That is not a believable thing for a lot of people, and it pains me to say that, right? Our young people, middle-class families, blue-collar workers, they're not sure whether the American dream is a real thing anymore. And so you got to attack that. That is existential to who we are as a country. So yes, I treat it, when something's an existential threat at the Pentagon, you throw some elbows in order to deal with that problem, because it is so important to who you are.
Senator, what is your best advice or thought or sort of mission statement or bumper sticker on the non-reality of Trump making America great again in terms of the economy? I mean, I think you get at it in your speech, that this is his greatest political weakness because this is his greatest betrayal. People voted for him despite all the criminal convictions, despite all the baggage, despite the deadly insurrection, because they thought he would make life, they thought they'd be able to breathe a little easier financially. And that was all a lie. How do you convey that on offense?
I mean, I think the easiest thing in the world is people know their own family budget. They may not know policy, they may not know this place, Washington, the Capitol, but they know their own family budget and how much they save or don't save every single month. So keep book. Just keep book. Right? You know how much the price of milk and eggs are. You know your insurance. You know your health insurance costs, which are about to spike after January 1st, right? Because of this bill he wants to pass this week. Keep book on how much money you had before he started and how much money you're keeping now that he's in. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the prices are going up in people's lives.